Tav, the first and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Because in this 31st chapter of Proverbs, that more people have requested through the years at funerals than any other, because it's a great description and definition of a mother, a God-fearing mother with virtues that are outstanding. So it has an alphabetical tone to it. Each verse, beginning in verse 10 through 31, is begun with the Hebrew alphabet. So from Aleph to Tav, we've got the perfect mother. Now, even though I know you think so, your mother probably wasn't perfect, because the book says none of us are. We have some folks in our hearts that seem like they were just perfect, and maybe you feel that way. But we are human beings, and we say and do things we shouldn't at times, even our dear mothers. But we've been blessed, most of us, to have had that wonderful person in our life that, as the young people today talk about having your back, or who was always there, who never let you down, who was always the one you could count on. That's a great description, or our descriptions of mothers. Proverbs 31 is written, verse 1 says, by King Lemuel, of sayings he learned from his mother. Proverbs 31 and 1. We do not know who King Lemuel was. There has never been found in study a King Lemuel. It's not a Hebrew name. In fact, it's of another nationality. So, who is this King Lemuel that's writing in the book of Proverbs? And Proverbs 1 and 1 says, these are the sayings of Solomon, the son of Bathsheba. Well, we believe, or the scholars believe, most of them, that this was a pet name from Bathsheba for her son Solomon. He would be a king because his father was King David. And so as he grew up, the little pet name was King Lemuel. King Lemuel. We don't absolutely know for a fact that that's true, but it makes sense. So we give honor to this chapter being from Solomon. And his mother, he said, taught him these things. Bathsheba had been a part of the sins of adultery with King David. They had a son to be born, and the son died. So Solomon was not her firstborn, but her secondborn. Most of Solomon's proverbs are the ones in regard to women are not very nice. He mainly speaks in the book of Proverbs of prostitutes, adulterers, contentious, difficult, brawling women. But he does have a few good things to say, and capped it all off by this 31st chapter that is one of our greatest definitions of mothers. For example of Solomon's writing about women in general, that some find some humor in, there's Proverbs 15 and verse 17. Solomon said, you know, better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a stalled ox and hatred therein. He said, I'd rather have a salad, and just a salad, but where there's love abiding, than a stalled ox or a fattened ox, cow, corn-fed, prime rib. No, I'd rather have a little old salad, Solomon said, if there's love, than to have your prime rib and not have love. And in chapter 25 and verse 24, Solomon said, you know, it's better to dwell in the corner of a housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. I'd rather live in a treehouse, Solomon said, than in a mansion with a brawling woman. So his descriptions are somewhat of that nature, but he certainly, in brilliant writing, like the 119th Psalm by David, here Solomon follows up by his writings of the Hebrew alphabet in describing that perfect mother that all the qualities of her surely should be imitated today by the good mothers in this audience. Compassion, discernment, faithfulness, kindness, industry, and true love are found in the descriptions of the virtuous mother. Proverbs 31, let's look at it from A to Z, from Leith to Tal. Who can find a virtuous mother? For her price is far above rubies. She is a mother, so that's why I use the word mother. Talks about her children and her husband. She's priceless. Her price is above rubies. The ruby, in this period of time, was the most precious gem and was of the greatest value, more than diamonds or gold. Rubies. It's my birthstone. All us July people, it's our birthstone. So it is the prettiest stone, I think. It's beautiful. And that description of a virtuous mother, God-fearing mother, she's priceless. Her price is far above rubies, the most precious gem. Far above. If we can find that virtuous mother, and we can, and some of you are, no doubt. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he'll have no need of spoil. I always thought that was talking about unfaithfulness, that the husband safely trusts in his wife, the God-fearing woman. But the more I read this past week and studied, the Hebrew seems to say about this not giving herself, or he has no need of spoil, that she's going to be a good steward of the household income and the food and the groceries. Brother Haskell Burgess was an elder sycamore for many years. Brother Haskell used to say many times, and heard him say, I tell you what, a woman can throw more out the back door than you can carry in the front door. What he meant by that is she's not a good steward of the food and making it stretch and taking care of the leftovers, you can more go out the back door than can come in the front door that the husband has earned. I think the scholars think that that's more what Solomon has in mind here, that this husband doesn't have any need of spoil. He's talking about she's a good steward for the family. Verse 12, she's going to do her husband good, not evil, all the days of her life. That's her goal. That's her commitment. That's her life. She wants to do good. She wants to be a good wife. She wants to be a good mother. Therefore, she will refrain from those things that will take her away from her good marriage and good home, and strive to do what the Lord would have to be done, to be God-fearing. We're going to try to get down to verse 30, where it says, she will be the woman that feareth the Lord. So she's striving to be good because she fears the Lord and she wants to be a good mate to her husband. Verse 13, she seeketh wool, seeketh. She's a worker. She seeketh wool, flax, and she worketh willingly with her hands. She is an industrious person, and mothers are. Their work is never done. This particular mother is very much involved in taking care of her household. We will read how that her household is clothed in scarlet. Scarlet was the most expensive and precious material and color possible. And it doesn't mean they walked around with scarlet, wearing scarlet, but it meant that they had the best that she could provide for them, especially in mention to the snow and the cold. She took care of her family. She worked willingly with her hands. And I know many of us had a mother like that, that made sure their children, boys, had ball gloves and footballs when they needed a new dress. But that was not a priority to them because they were mothers willingly working with their hands. Verse 14, she's like the merchant ship. She brings food from afar. She is a provider, a giver. 15, she rises while it is yet night and gives meat to her household, and a portion to the maidens, the girls in the household. This mother is the first one up every morning. And notice it is before, while it's still night. It's not daylight yet. I can identify with that. We had an old coal stove in the middle of our living room, After I left, they got electricity, but electric heaters. But Dan had an old coal stove. Mama got up first. Mama would get the fire going on the old coal stove and start breakfast. This mother does that. While it's still dark, she'd get up and start things for her family so they can have a good breakfast, so they can be ready to face the day, making sure that they have what they need. That's bringing their food from afar and giving to her household what it is yet night. Verse 16, she considers a field and buyeth it. She's a good judge of such things. She knows how to get things like that accomplished and the value of things. And with the fruit of her hand, she works and plants a vineyard. She takes care of the gardening for the family as well. She girdeth her loins with strength, the strength of her arms by labor. Verse 18, she perceiveth that her merchandise is good. She has a good self-esteem. Very important in child rearing is for mothers to have a good self-esteem. Your children are going to have more difficulty with their self-esteem if you do not set the example and the pattern of it yourself. And you need to feel good about yourself and correct anything that needs to be corrected, but then have a high esteem so we can pass that on to our children, that they feel good about themselves and use their talents. She perceiveth her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth not out by night. When others have blown the candle out to lie down and rest, mother's candle still burns. She's the only one in the household whose candle is still burning. Father's asleep. He's tired and worked hard. The whole household is quiet. As she sits in her rocking chair, nursing that little one that's sick. Her candle never goes out. Her candle goeth not out by night. Greatest definition of a mother I've ever heard of. And it is that definition that influences and encourages so many of us to have those kind of mothers. 19, she layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. She makes her own thread. These are ways of producing thread. She stretches out her hand to the poor. She reaches forth her hands to the needy. This mother from A to Z, who's a perfect example to us from the Bathsheba's teaching to Solomon, she cares about people. She has a genuine compassion. She's not a me person. It would be easy for her to have argued to the poor person who holds out a hand, who knocks on her door and says, "Do you have any food that you could share with me?" She could have easily said, "Let me tell you something. I've been up before daylight working and cooking, and I planted the vineyard out here and that grew all these things that I provided for my family. What were you doing? Where's your anything to you? You'd be out working and trying to provide something instead of begging." Not this mother. She could have, but she didn't. She reaches her hand to the poor. She knows some of them are sick. She knows some of them have had a difficult time, not as blessed as she to have a husband and have healthy children. She's compassionate because she knows to whom mercy is given, mercy shall be granted. And she may need mercy in her own life. So yes, she reaches out to the poor. You have a friend. You know, God always had a love for the poor. Jesus did. He reached out to the poor. Blessed are the poor. Those kind of love statements and achievements, this good mother is an example of. She reacheth her hands to the needy ones. 21, she's not afraid of the snow. Her household is clothed scarlet, as we've said, the very best. 22, she maketh her own clothes. 23, a byfactor of her fidelity and goodness is that her husband is respected and sits among the gates of the city with the elders of the land. That was a great honor. Every Jewish community had gates And to be an official-like person that could sit at the gate and welcome and be also in judgment, study the book of Ruth and Boaz, and trying to decide property, things of that nature. They took it to the elders who sat at the seat. And later on, Boaz becomes one of the elders who sat at the gates of the city himself because of Ruth and the good marriage they had. It was an honor for a man to be so appointed, and his wife would be a great influence. If your wife were not a good person, morally or socially, it would not have been easy for a man to have been given. He would not have been given that honor. So it is with elders in the church. Not only are they to be good, God-fearing men and deacons, but their wives are to be also. And this says such in 1 Timothy chapter 3 and Titus 1. So her husband's known in the gates. He's a good man. Got a good family. Got a good wife. She brings out the best in him. 24, she's industrious, makes linen, sells it. 25, strength and honor are her clothing. This is beautiful writing. What's she wearing today? Strength and honor. She wears strength and honor. They are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. I do not always understand it, but I've always known that women are stronger than men. Most cases. There might be a few exceptions. Men are taller, stronger, usually of muscles and strength by the way of creation. Occasionally there's an exception to the rule. But when it comes to the sicknesses and the challenges of life and death and handicaps and sorrows and stress, that becomes heavy burdens, addictions, financial woes. There's a strength among women and mothers that far bypasses the men, in my observation. I think that's what Solomon's talking about, strength and honor, her clothing. The late, great Marty Robbins had a lot of great songs, but one of them I always liked was My Woman, My Wife. And he talks in this song, the lyrics are of the song, whoever wrote it, that this couple had two little babies that were born in the spring, but died when the winter was come. And the lyrics are, I wanted to give up, I wanted to quit. He wanted to die. He didn't want to face another day. But my woman's strength carried me through. Can't imagine anything harder than to lose two little twin babies. But there was a strength in motherhood and in women that can face such things while we men want to quit and give up. Strength and honor are her clothing. 26, she openeth her mouth with wisdom. Okay, that's good. And in her tongue is the law of kindness. Kindness. Don't you love to talk to people who are kind? And there's a kindness in the things they say and the observations they make. Mr. Clark, Adam Clark, in his commentary on this verse says, in her tongue is the law of kindness. This is the most distinguishing excellence of this woman, the most. There are very few of those who are called managing women. You know, that she bought a field and she has great devotion to her family and household. There are very few of those who are called managing women who are not lords over their own husbands, tyrants over their servants, and insolent among their neighbors. But this woman, with all of her eminence and excellence, was of a meek and a quiet spirit. Blessed woman, blessed family. It reminds us of 1 Peter 3, when Peter described a husband and wife relationship, that this woman that could have a great influence upon her husband was of a meek and quiet spirit. so it is here that she speaks with kindness. 27, she looks well to the ways of her household. She eateth not the bread of idleness. Idleness creates vice. People don't have anything to do. Put some boys together that don't have anything to do, they're going to get in trouble. You put some men and women where they have nothing to do, they have a lot of idle time, their minds, they themselves are going to get into trouble. Paul talked about this in 1 Timothy chapter about women in regard to this in 1 Timothy 5 and verse 11. Younger women refuse to support church, for when they have begun to wax wanton against Christ, they will marry, having damnation because they've cast off their first faith. And withal they learn to be idle. She was not an idle person, wandering from house to house, and not only idle, but tattlers and also busybodies, speaking things they ought not. This perfect mother from A to Z was one who did not eat the bread of idleness. You ever thought about idleness being bread? She didn't eat it. No, don't want any of that. 28, her children rise up and call her blessed. Amen. Her husband also, he praiseth her. They've got a good marriage. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. Favor is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. That's the ultimate goal, to fear the Lord. Beauty does not last. It's short-lived. But the principles by which one fears the Lord will live throughout eternity. She's a child of God, tries to do right, live right. The conclusion, verse 31, give her the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. It reminds us of Revelation 14 and 13, that the promise is that those who die in Christ, their works shall follow them. Give her own works will praise her, will be a description of the God-fearing person that she is. Well, we've looked at Solomon's wisdom from his mother, King Lemuel, and we find from A to Z the descriptions given. Nobody's perfect. The good news is there was one who died who was perfect, and he is our Savior. He loved us enough to give himself on the cruel cross. As we honor our mothers and fathers today, maybe there's one here that needs to repent as a Christian or needs to obey the gospel as an alien sinner. There is no greater honor you could give to your mother than the fact that you are walking with the Lord, that you're a child of God, that her own works are still reaching out to praise her by your commitment to the Lord. Whatever your needs may be, would you come while we stand and sing?